Come on in here. And yeah, I'm featuring the VLX. I really, really like it. It's, to me, they finally got the LED wash right. Like, they've got it to a point that it's a very useful fixture. It's not an effect light anymore. And it's kind of, I'm likening it to the Source 4 of the wash light. You know, a light that took an existing idea, revolutionized the internal guts, made it, you know, consume less power, have better optics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing the same thing with the VLX. It's a very pure light. The speed at which the LEDs change is faster than any LED light on the market that I've seen. And I had an opportunity on a previous tour where we went worldwide, and there was LED PARs in the truss. So I saw almost every manufacturer of LED PAR. I've used the Mac 301s, and I've used a whole bunch of different moving headlights impressions, and then Chinese knockoffs thereof and whatnot. Well, I A/B'd the VLX against a couple of other ones and ran a chase at like 1,500 beats per minute, going red to blue. Yeah, right. The VLX is the only one where you can still discern the change from red to blue. The console here, I chose it for a few reasons, and I want to drop the name of my programmer, Seth Robinson, who is, it's the first time I've really worked with a programmer. Often I've been my own programmer, and I have worked with some programmers in the past. Working with Seth was a time when I called him up. I met him on a couple of gigs over the years, and we always got to talking about things. And I described some of these crazy ideas that I have about how to control the lighting console and how to cue things, and he was really intrigued by that. So we got together, and his desk of choice is the M1. He was a Maxix guy for a long time, and he has a good relationship with Martin. It's his console of choice. He was prepared to work on a different console, but he convinced me that there were some features that were going to be useful. Now, I've worked on Hog 2, and I've worked on, you know, I started programming lights back when we had the IntelliBeam controllers and stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of different desks, and I've been with, you know, on the MA for several years, and this one, it's like doing, we're to the point where it's like doing a CAD program on a different platform or a different word processor. They do the same things. There's a lot of similarities, and I felt very comfortable behind this desk after only about an hour or two of screwing around on it. And that's after Seth had done the bulk of the programming and coming up with our workflows. If you look over here, I have a kind of mishmash of things, and we're tying them all together through this Mac over here. This guy here is driving all the cueing of the show. The first thing that you need to know is that every single lighting event that you're going to see in the Linkin Park show starts as a media event. The task was to be able to time code the show without having to program the cues in the time code tools afforded by the consoles, which I find are rather rudimentary and not very intuitive. And a friend of mine who I went to high school with, actually, he has a band who they use Ableton Live for all their backing tracks. And he said to me once, is there a way that we could have our light show just be pre-programmed and we could go on the road without you, but with your cues and drive it using what we're using already? So that's got me thinking. We get to Linkin Park, and I say, I think we could do this. Well, Ableton records notes and control changes in a timeline that's very familiar musically. Now, I've basically spread out my ideas in, I have a few different tracks here. There's Roadmap, that's verse, chorus, bridge. That's a workflow that I haven't changed in 10 years. So now I have the roadmap that exists on one track here, and it's just an ascending set of MIDI note numbers that send information over there to trigger cues. And then I have drums tracks, I have drums, loops, bass. These are just names of things where I've split up the musical things that I'm hearing. So I listen to a track and I decide which parts of the music need lighting effects and which parts are to be left alone. Yeah. Also on this one, Ghost Town Media is a company that did all of the video content. And it's a group of guys in LA. There's like 9 of them that all work on this project. And they their task was to drive the look of the tour, including some merchandising and outside promo and all that kind of stuff, as well as the video content during the show. So I let them develop their content, I look at the songs with what they've come up with, and I let that sort of lead what we're doing. You'll notice it's very monochromatic. There's not a lot of color in the show. There's a lot of shades of white everywhere, from like a paper white HMI through CTO down to like a dirty, almost ambery, sepia tone look. Right. So anyway, back to the cueing. I'm instead of working with an awkward interface, and every lighting console manufacturer is coming up with a different way to do time code and cues and whatnot. These guys have been doing it for a long time. Computer-based recording is just recording events in time. Consoles do listen to MIDI note numbers, but they're even better generally, and this one especially, at working with MIDI show control. Enter Seth Robinson, who came up with this little app that he wrote in Max. Max is a development environment that is bundled with Ableton Live. And he bought the whole package so that he wrote this user interface and everything from scratch for this tour. And it's modular. It takes all this MIDI note information as well as time code and translates to MIDI show control for the console. So your first module here is a time code reader. When it gets a frame of time code that's in that song, it knows immediately to fire the macro that sets the console up. And that's what I would do normally. I would do that manually in my old workflow, where you have a macro that gets you on the right page, sets up all your playbacks, and starts the first cue and all that kind of stuff. So that's done as soon as it sees any time code in a certain range. Then it identifies which cue list is going to be the roadmap, and it routes changes the MIDI note numbers into show control to tell it which cue to go to in the roadmap. Here we have fader inputs. I can get them to follow time code. Each of these modules can follow the time code so that they change with the time code, or not, so that they're global. My faders I keep global, and you see if I raise a fader over here, it shows up here. Yeah. Note numbers. Let me just force a macro if I for instance, put in Riches and Kings. Okay, I just forced the macros so that it set up the console and everything. These modules take the playback surfaces and change them into MIDI show control. And it tells it what channel to go down, what your first start note is. For these 8 pads, it's 64. Here's our first note, and it just happens to do that. And the beauty of it is it's velocity sensitive. More on that in a minute. It basically defines a range of cue lists, and it's very simple. Whenever I want from note 60, from this pad all the way up, the first cue list is identified, and it tells it 8 cue lists after that are these 8 pads. So all I have to do is record anything into one of those slots over there, and boom, they're associated. Likewise, this module is taking care of the keys. So the first start note is 72. This happens to be note number 72. All the way through 25. Sometimes I use 3 notes, sometimes I use all 25, depending on what the song demands. But instead of writing a chase where you go, okay, step 1, this happens, step 2, this happens, I just say, give me these lights here, give me these lights here, and we'll figure out everything in between. I record that on the Ableton timeline, and you have a time-coded show. Now, I feel that this setup that I got going not only enables a rigid timecode approach, but it also allows live playback, also velocity sensitive. See how the harder you press the key, the brighter the lights go. The reason that I really like this is because these interfaces are designed for playback. They're also really inexpensive, because the home recording market has spawned stuff like this. Their market's a lot bigger than ours. So I would rather have a lighting application living on a notebook that is my lighting console and control it with these than to invest in hardware like this. I invested in this hardware because it's kind of, we're not there yet, but that's where I'm trying to lead here. I don't want to see a bigger, more expensive console. I would rather spend a large amount of money on software, or obviously a good way for lighting companies to do it is to come up with the interface boxes. This not only is an ArtNet box, but it also it unlocks more universes from the M1. If you want more universes, you just add another Ether to DMX box. I don't see why we're arguing over where the flash buttons are going to go or what they should be made of, when someone like 400 or 500 years ago came up with this interface for playing back. This is a ubiquitous interface, the pad thing, ever since for about 10 years now. You know, all the musicians are using this. Why not meet them on their terms? These things are available worldwide, so when I'm on tour and I break a fader, I can get one in a music shop, I can get it shipped out to me. They ship worldwide, they're easily acquirable, and they're inexpensive. So a broken fader on this doesn't mean a repair job, it means I give it to a local stagehand as a souvenir from the show. And finally, I have a Mac Pro down here, and I'm just going to launch Media Master. Media Master on the Mac can play Quartz Composer patches. So again, enter Seth, yep. And he designed a Quartz Composer patch that takes the video clip that we want to play, which is edited beginning to end. We need to play it in sync. Especially there's one time where Mike Shinoda is actually lip syncing with himself for just one, the first line of the song Catalyst is shown straight from the video. So we had to nail it, right? Basically, Seth has some crazy math going on where he takes the duration of the clip. Now the clips don't have time code on them, mind you. He takes the duration of the clip, subtracts that from the 24-hour day, gives it the first frame number, and Bob's your uncle. 30 frames a second time code coming in, content's 24 frames a second, Archaeos is trying to play it at 60 frames a second, nobody cares, the video is always in the right frame. The time code is going straight into the audio input of the Macintosh using a little app called Lockstep, which is inexpensive and very reliable, and it locks up in 2 or 3 frames. It locks up quicker than a MIDI timepiece. Yeah. So you'll see how the barricade's lit up right now. That's because those lights have operators next to them. So all the programming, the intensity and texture of the follow spots is coming from the console, and I have a guy up there just aiming. Right. He's got a zone that each operator has a little zone that they have, and I basically coach them. Instead of calling spots like a traditional standby ready go situation, I'll just let the guys know if their light's coming on, if I want them to go slightly outside of their zone or stay on a guy as he goes up a set of stairs. But generally, if our singer is to run from one side of the stage to the other, he just gets handed off from guy to guy. So these are the VLXs at work. And I'd like to show you that red-blue thing that I was talking about because it's pretty incredible. So even without the time code going in, I can still play the timeline and it'll play all the cues. We just won't have the media running. All these controls are mapped differently, so I have smoke control here. I have all my moles here. And this is a much more intuitive control. This mod wheel is a much more intuitive control than a fader, I find, especially for moles. So it's just like using more intuitive controls. Yeah, I saw Muse and I was blown away. There's a stigma attached to using this stuff. People think, oh, that's for clubs and DJs and stuff. It's like, no, you could run the Grammys off of this, you know? Okay, here comes the massive Very Light look. You know what I'm talking about? The purity of the light. I've got a chase running it, but they're changing it about 600 beats per minute.
And those are the LEDs you use?
Yeah.
Like the Max?
No, they're the VLX.
The VLX,
yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
No escape. I'm my own worst enemy. I've given